So, for Jackie,
Yes, sir.
what are you trying to do with your business this year?
Grow it. So so I want to grow
Now, how much?
dollars or clients. What do you look for?
Well,
One?
either.
Either one.
Uh,
Well, I want to get to 80 grand by the end of the year.
Okay.
For step.
All right. So that's our first goal, right?
Yeah.
Now, how do you bring on clients?
I bring on clients a couple ways. One through networking, through Rainmakers, through that
Okay.
kind of stuff.
So what is it? Let's stick with that. What is the client worth to you?
Client work to me is probably about $3,000.
A year?
Yeah.
3,000 a year. So really, what you need to do is you need to get to what is 3,000 divided by 80,000? 25?
Sorry, this calculator's.
Yeah, or 26.
Yeah. 27. Be exact.
Okay, good.
All right. You need 27. Okay. Right.
Nice.
Okay, so you're at, and what is your primary lead generation tools right now?
Rainmakers is my primary lead generation tool right now.
Okay, so really what we need to do is try to create a real organized strategy to make sure this is as focused as we possibly can to eliminate as much time as we can, right?
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about the types of different people that will feed your business and how they're different, because not all networkers are created equal.
Correct.
Right? So you've got basically three different kinds of people. You've got what's called a salesperson, right?
Okay. All right.
And salesperson, have you ever read the book Tipping Point?
Yes.
Salesperson really has nothing to do with the type of business you're in. It just has everything to do with like how you move information. Okay, so salespeople just move information one way. Yeah.
Mostly.
And so we've all seen these people. What's the matter? We've all seen these people that will go to a networking event and they will just push out information one way.
You give their brochure.
They'll give you their brochure, they show it with a resume, and if you can't do anything for them, they just shut down and move on down the road, right? So they're all in the asking, they're not part of the network, okay? So I'm going to use a lot of verbiage, it's going to sound like the Matrix, but they're not connected to anything because all they're doing is pushing out information. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so because they only push out information, these legs here are thin. And that means a lot of the information doesn't go through there, okay? And then you've got what's called a connector. A connector is automatically they don't even understand sometimes their role in business. They connect people because they're social, right? And a connector will outsell a salesperson over the long time on accident if they're focused and they understand how to use their social tendency to really grow their business. They'll actually outsell a salesperson on accident. Now, there are a lot of really successful salespeople. The problem with salespeople and the way they move information is that they tend to have to go out and kill what they eat every month. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Because they're never creating an asset behind them that is allowing them to bring business in or information in. It's just going out. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So it's like you ever see those guys that are like, what is that, Boiler Room? You know, you remember that? Where they're just banging on a phone and if I can show you a way, blah, 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 blah. But they're not creating an asset to them, for them in the way they manage information because it's just outbound. But a connector understands that they have to be a bridge as well as a transmitter. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. They're pushing out information, but they're also allowing information to be a conduit and move through them. So a connector usually has different networks in different spaces. They could have like a school network, and then this could be their school, and they'll maybe bridge onto that. And then they could have a network in the professional room they're in, and then they could have a networking association they're in. Then it could be their city that's in their network, their neighborhood community. They've got all these things that they're bridging together. Chris is a connector. Chris didn't even know it when he started Rainmakers, but he was naturally a connector. He had your neighborhood association. He was the guy that had the parties that people came over. He was in sales. He maintained his database. The LinkedIn thing. You were pretty much a connector when you started.
Yeah.
You agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So a connector will outsell a salesperson almost 10 to 1 on accident. I'll give you an example. There was a guy that I went to school with. There was a guy that I sold suits with after I graduated college. And this kid he sold more suits on accident on Friday and Saturday. I mean, I would work 5 days a week, and I was a pretty good salesman, I was really competitive. So I'd work 5 days a week and I'd come in. This guy would sell more suits in 2 days than I'd sold in 5. I was like, what the heck? who is this kid? And his name was, I think his name was Tony Parisi. So he'd come in, and on accident, people would come in and they'd ask for Tony, and I go, yeah, here I am, you know. And they go like, no, Italian Tony. I'd go, right again, you know. And they go, no, the skinny one. And I'm like, you know, I was like, you know, 6'1", 165 pounds. I'm like, well, how skinny do you want, right? And he was like really skinny. So, but his family owned a restaurant and that in town called Parisi's, and people would wait, and they would come in 2 or 3 times and wait for him to work in order to buy a suit from him. And he wasn't that good at even matching, but I was like, God, what is it? Why does everybody like this kid? I mean, what's the problem? You know, why wouldn't they buy a suit from us? We take great care of people. He was the ultimate connector. If you went into that restaurant, by the time he walked you from the table and sat you down, you would meet a judge, you would meet the AD of Notre Dame, you might have met 4 or 5 coaches in the girls softball for Notre Dame. And he was so good at working that room that half the value of going in there and having a meal was who you'd meet. Because the food was pretty good, but it wasn't that good. Does that make sense? In fact, he's 17, 18 years old. And there were a lot of nights that he would get a phone call because someone, you know, got pulled over and they needed to judge his phone number, and he'd make it, you know, like a little thing, you know. So it was like really powerful how just knowing these many people that this connector could be. So the last type of person that moves information is called a maven. And a maven, really, if you can invariably see this go out like 7 degrees, it's like a connector on steroids. Mavens have the ability to affect people that are beyond their own network, you know? I mean, I think we got this graphic that shows it right here, right? It's like that it goes out further, almost, you know, 7 degrees deep. They are influencing people that they've never met. Now, who influences you that you've never met?
Who influences me that I've never met?
Mm-hmm. Oprah?
Some stuff.
Yeah?
You know, depending
Most
on-
powerful maven in the world, right?
Yeah.
She gets behind something and it just changes the market.
Yep.
I mean, she's made more millionaires out of book, huh?
Warren Buffett.
Warren Buffett, right?
Warren Buffett, yeah.
Maven. Who else is a
Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs is a maven. Seth Godin, maven, right? All these guys have this much influence because not only have they connected over the years, not only have they bridged and moved information, because these guys are all bloggers, they're all telling people what's important to them, and they're connecting other people, but they have a medium behind them, and they have perceived expertise.